Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Max Story.
Hello, and thanks to another episode of Real People Getting Real Results. So hopefully you're watching on the Blue Collar Leadership YouTube channel. If not, maybe you're listening in on the Blue Collar Leadership podcast. I got another special guest here today, and I got Mr. Tanner Lyons from up in Iowa. Welcome to the show, Tanner.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Pre-show, we had the delay. Are you still experiencing a delay, or did things straighten out?
I think it looks pretty good from now.
Okay, because that'll make it a lot easier for both of us, especially you, if I ain't going in kung fu movie style like you mentioned earlier. All right, man. So hopefully that'll get straightened out, and we'll have a great show right here. So thank you for being on the show. One thing I always ask people on the front end is, how do we know each other? Do you remember? Do you recall how you got to know about me?
Yeah, there's a story there for sure.
Take off, man.
All right, man. All right, good. So when I was working for Demco here in Northwest Iowa, they afforded me 2 times to actually see you. One was at a lean consortium that they had sent me to further my education. And then, of course, the second time is when they called in and they shut everything down. Both plants, and had you come in with Rhea and speak. And so I was able to meet you a couple different times. So that's how I know you.
Okay. So that was that lean consortium was up in you remember the name of that college? I can't remember the name of it.
Dort?
Yep, Dort. And that was probably 2019 or something like that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think you're right. 2019.
19.
Yep, 2019, I think.
Everything's either before or after COVID. It seems like that was before COVID. So, but you started reaching out to me at some point. Was it before we came up to actually talked in person to Demco? Is that when you reached out? Seemed like maybe it was.
I think that's when I initially reached out. I was like everybody else, where when I picked up your books for the first time, and it's you guys are talking and you tell people, hey, give me a call. Hey, do this. I just kind of thought, yeah, okay. Give me a call. Yeah, right. And I just kind of stayed with that mentality. I guess it's probably the reason I didn't progress very well in the very first stages of it. But eventually, you did it again. You said, give me a call. So I gave you a call, and we just started talking about my development and where I was at and what was going on at the time. So.
Yeah, man, you've been growing a lot since I've known you. You share your story and you reach out every now and then and share that. So what, just catch up anybody listening or watching, what was your job at the time? What were you doing when you went to Dort and saw us speak up there at Dort?
Well, I was a quality assurance specialist actually for Demco. So I was doing quality for Demco and went to the lean consortium because they wanted me to learn a few different concepts, lean concepts. We were digging into it pretty heavy at the time. And my supervisor then really pushed hard for me to go and to learn and to gain that knowledge along with some other people at the same time from Demco. And I kind of latched onto what you were saying. I think I've told you this story already, but it's like, you had that thing at the end where you could win a laptop and your books and stuff like that. I always joke about that. It's like, I wanted that laptop. Dang, I wanted that laptop. But, the books were invaluable. I didn't know it at the time, but, the information that they had was something that I've never read before.
Are you talking about the Kaizen book you got from us at that event or something different?
Oh man, I won a bunch of your books. Actually, I won, the 30 Traits book and the blue book, leading from the front lines. And then I got a bunch of signed books from you. Unleash, Leadership and Supervision. I mean, I've got all your signed ones here. So
you've been in what I call that sponge mode, Tanner. You've been soaking it up.
As much as I possibly can, yours along with a lot of others. And so, you know, that's kind of, when I started this, this journey, and I call it a journey. When I started the journey, it was kind of strange. It was from the inside looking out, and I always call that, you're looking at it from a perspective of, why doesn't this person do this? And why doesn't this person do that? And if so-and-so will just do this, then I would be able to do that. And really your books teach the opposite. And I always get into, I watch some of your shows like what we're doing now. And I've had people even ask me, what's your favorite part? What's your favorite book? And I don't have an answer for that. I don't have a favorite part. I don't have a favorite book. I have a collective of what I've read, that I've gained, that the knowledge that I've gained, that's probably my favorite part of what I've done. But do I have a specific thing? Not entirely, no.
Yeah, and you just been doing like I've been doing. I just started a few years ahead of you, I think, on my reading journey. I ain't sure though. Had you been reading leadership development, personal growth before you got into my content?
No, I didn't really. I was one of those people that, I had better things to do. I had kids to raise, and I had money to make, and I had, I always thought something else was more important than personal development. You always put personal development toward, last. And I think, as guys and as fathers and things, we can get into that mode where, everything else is before us, and we put our own needs last. So,
Yeah. So share some of that journey. We're talking about 4 or 5 years ago that did you start out slow reading those books and then got into them deeper, or you started out and then kind of been steady the whole time, or did you ever fall off the wagon like some people do and get back on it? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, for me, my journey's probably a little bit different than most. Maybe it's the same, but maybe it's different in the fact that, my journey started, probably 2019. I tried to introduce a lot of the concepts that I was reading in what I call your 30 traits book. It's my favorite one to this day. And I continue to go back to that book, but I tried to introduce some concepts, and I wasn't far enough along at the time for them to be met very well. So, I tried to do that a little bit. I tried to do some work. I was writing stuff we had, at the time, we had whiteboards for walls, and they still do. It's a really cool thing. You can write all over the walls and stuff at Demco in the lab there. It's kind of neat. But I'd write stuff on the board every once in a while, try to take some advice, a quote or something that I found that, I thought that I wanted to share with others.
Yeah.
And that lasted for a little bit. And then, but the real journey begins, I think everybody's got a personal story. And I think for me, my personal story, really, I don't want to get into it too deep. It can be very lengthy if I get into too many aspects of it. But, a little over 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with CPTSD, which is a form of PTSD. It's just a complex version of it. So my journey for me was not just about leadership, but it was personal development. It was,
man,
getting to know who Tanner is, and who is Tanner, and what is he like, what is he not like, what are his tolerances, what's his personality type. I mean, all of these things that we just go through life going through the motions a lot. We get a job, we do this, we start a family. All those things are amazing, wonderful things. But I think that people with situations like mine, we have a tendency to kind of either live too far forward or too far in the past. And so that's a really difficult thing when you're living too far forward or you live in too far in the past. You're not focusing on your present. And the present me wasn't taking care enough of the needs for future me, and wasn't dealing with some of the past me. So, reading your books, and then of course Ria's books, they resonated with me just because it was real life people doing real things. And it was struggles and battles that you have gone through, that your wife has gone through. And for me, it resonated just because it wasn't preachy. It wasn't, do this, do that. It was, you have a choice. You have a choice to make. You can make that choice, or you can choose not to make the choice, but you're going to pay for it one way or the other. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so for me, it was a personal thing. And so this whole thing has been a personal journey for me, that, reading your books and then the suggestions from other people and other people buying me books. I mean, yeah, it's hard when you sit back and you think about it, because so much has happened. So much.
Yeah, in a short time, really, when you talk about the big picture, is so much in a hurry, right? It seems like nothing's happening, and then all of a sudden you look back and like, oh, a lot has happened. So I'm really proud of you, Tanner. I mean, I know you've shared some of your story with me, and I mean, I'm extremely proud of you as a human being and a person for buckling down. I call it sponge mode, going in and not letting off the gas, jumping on the wagon, just like I did. I mean, you started 2019, I started 2008, and I can't imagine and believe the things that have happened. But I don't know how much or if any you want to share of your story, but I think
Yeah, I'll share.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll share a little bit of it. It's important to me because it's important for what I'm doing in my life now. So,
Hey,
I'm not.
Tanner, real quick before you share that, since you mentioned that, so we'll go and get to what you're doing now, and then we'll back up to your story. So
Okay.
because your growth led you to what you're doing now, which is based on your story going way back and building on
Yeah.
that and helping other people. So let's finish out real quick. You applied it at work, you applied it at home, you're getting results in your personal life and your professional life, and things were good at work. Things got better at work for you.
Yeah, things were what things were at work. You get into deadlines and you get into meeting customer needs, and those are all things that you want to do. And things got better for me at work. Things got better for me at home. There's no doubt about that. I'm not saying that journey was not the hardest thing I've ever done. I think anybody that does the amount of work that I've done can understand that it's not an easy thing. It's not something. It's not for the timid.
Yeah.
You have to really want it. It's one
Yeah.
of those things that it's who you are.
Yep.
It's just, it becomes a part of you.
Anybody watching or listening, you keep watching or listening, because when Tanner shares some of his personal story, it's going to be powerful. It's kind of like Ria's personal story. When you know her personal story, everything else she does just means so much more, right? And that's the way life's going to be with you, Tanner. You've grown so much, you've been through so much, and I don't know what you're going to share yet, obviously, because you hadn't shared it here publicly. But whatever you do share, people will see you differently when you share that. Not in a bad way. They'll see you stronger as a stronger person, because of you when you share your story and then you start talking about all the personal growth and stuff you've done, all of this combined, just like with Ria or with me, we all got a different story, but that's what makes you become really motivational and inspirational, is when you tie all this growth to where you come from. Like Ria's story is unbelievable. When people really know her story, it's just unbelievable. And then everything she's done since then, just unimaginable, right? So So you got the results and you stroking along, things getting better at work. And then I don't know if somehow you got to this thing you're doing now.
Yeah, somehow I got to this thing that I'm doing now. It's it. Tell God your plans. And it's funny because it's like, you think you have one plan for your life. You think, gosh, I'm on the right track, man. I got a great job, which I did. I had a great job at Demco. I mean, I can't say enough good about what they have to offer as far as leadership and what they're doing. And it's not a plug to plug Demco, but if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been where I'm at now.
Yeah, man. Plug them real quick. What do they actually do, and what kind of jobs do they have?
Well, it's a powerful thing when you have a group of people, and I'm not talking about just leadership in general, like the top leaders. I'm talking about leaders from the head of the organization from the owners of the company, all the way down to team members that are leading. they have a great group of people. My wife still works for Demco. She's a lead.
Yeah.
She does everything she can to make sure that she meets the needs of her people, and her people take care of her. And, they take care of each other there, and they teach each other, and they have what they call Demco Academy. And they literally have a retired teacher that teaches Demco Academy. So they have a teacher teaching it. And
That's awesome.
so, yeah, I mean, they've done so much, and the strides that they've made over the last year, over the last 5 years. I mean, they're unimaginable without complete buy-in. You have to have complete buy-in to have the results that they've had. So nothing's perfect, but I tell you, I wouldn't be where I'm at if they wouldn't have intervened and said, hey, we've got something that we think that they knew that I would enjoy. They knew, because I talked about you before they invited you.
Yeah.
And then they invited you, and then you came to speak, and it was kind of like, well, they get it. They understand. They actually care.
Yeah.
Because bringing you in isn't for the faint of heart either, because you're going to tell the truth, and you're going to say, hey, if they're not taking care of you, go find somebody that's going to take care of you, but I think that's the really good part about Demco. And, they're in such a small market. They're in a big market in a small community. And so they take extra special care of their people because they're harder to come by here. They do everything they can to recruit, and they bring people in, and they can take somebody coming straight out of high school and build them all the way up into management status with the programs that they have there. So, I mean, if you want to succeed, if you feel like you're not going anywhere and you're in manufacturing, give Demco a call.
Yeah, man. That's
That's
awesome.
how I'm going to plug Demco today.
That's awesome. And if any of the Demco folks are watching, I can tell you, Tanner does nothing but speak highly of Demco and the leadership team that's supported him for the years that he was working there. So thanks to the Demco leadership team for what they've done for you and the other folks for having us up, because they shut down operations of both facilities. And there was, I forget how many people, just trying to remember back the size of that room. There were several hundred, maybe 300-400 people in the room. Everybody was there, I guess. Yeah,
everybody was there. I'll share my story. I'll share the portion of it that I'll share with you. I think maybe there might be an upcoming one with Rhea. We'll see what she thinks about that.
Okay, yeah, man, whatever. Don't just share whatever's comfortable with you.
So, and this is on the website too, but I was, I don't know, barely a teenager, I think, when I entered the foster care system. So foster care system is kind of weird because, in my situation, I came from a violent home. I don't speak ill of anybody or my past. I just don't do that. But I came from a violent home, and I was shipped around a lot as a kid, back and forth between parents and grandparents. And, finally got to the point where, they took me out of my home. In Iowa, they call, you're either a China, which is in child in need of assistance, or you're adjudicated kid, which means you got into some trouble. Back then, I was classified as a child in need of assistance. And so what they do is they try to find you a place. And if they can't find you a place, they put you in a cell. And so you basically go to this detention center where, they strip you down and do all these tests, and then they put you in a room, and then they lock you in that room, and then they let you out when they decide that you can have an activity. And, I did that for a while until they found a foster home for me to go to. I was in that foster home not long. They were good people, really good people. They tried to mend a broken child. I mean, they did what they could. They had other kids to take care of, though. So, it was, foster home didn't work. I was too much trouble. So I ended up getting sent to a boys' home. And yeah, that was not good.
What age was that, Tanner? You got sent to the boys' home at what age? I
was probably 13, maybe 14.
Okay.
It's been a long time ago. So, I know it was in my formative years, my teenage years, and I spent most of those years locked up. Spent most of those years, from group home to boys' home to homes. I mean, just kind of shuffled around. And, those places back then, back then, they weren't any place for anybody. They lock kids in rooms and padded rooms, and they do, they have all these different things. You would think that the lockup facilities would be the worst, but they're actually the best, because at least you're locked in your room at night. That people can't get into your room, and you don't have to sleep with one eye open and defend yourself because somebody came in and decided to hit you in the head with a heavy object, or, whatever happened to you. I had so many different things happen to me, so many different traumatic events where I had to fight my way out, or, you get caught by yourself. You could never get caught by yourself in a place like that. It's just the way that it was. I don't sit and I don't cry too much about it. But shuffled around quite a bit. And, finally, when I was 17, I was emancipated as an adult. Basically, it just means that you're 17 years old and the paperwork says that you're an adult and you have to take care of yourself. So when I was 17, I was homeless again. I was homeless before that because I ran from a lot of those centers. They were pretty violent centers. So I ran from those, a lot, because they were just, there's too many angles where people could get at you and not enough supervision. And so you run from those. And that sucks, because you have, sorry.
It's all right, man. It's real stuff.
You get some of that, you think about that and you think, gosh, man, being 15 years old and sleeping under a bridge, or, no, excuse me, knowing what it's like to be homeless at such a young age. You can't fathom that as a person.
Yeah.
So it's when you're classified as an adult, at least at that point, you'd already slept under bridges. You'd already jumped from house to house. You've already, been living on the streets. So it's not much of a change. You go from living in a locked facility or in a group home facility to back on the streets again. And, where I came from, I couldn't go back to. I tried. That didn't work, and so, you just end up homeless. I mean, that's what you do. You end up with nothing. You're 17 years old. You can't get a real job because you're not really an adult. So you can't do all the things that an adult would do. And you do anything and everything you can, and I got myself into quite a bit of trouble when I was younger. And, you're kind of in survival mode at some point. You live in there, you live in that. I'll talk about that a little bit, but you live in that survival mode, and that's no good for you, because you're doing what you have to survive and not to thrive. And there is no thriving in that type of environment, so, so I had, at that point, I was 17 years old. I was living on the streets, jumping from, house to house and place to place, and trying to live, just a life, and, having to stay in my car, and then my car gets towed. And so then you're living under a bridge. So you have nothing else, you can't afford to get your car out because you don't have any money. You don't have food. You don't have anything to eat. So, you kind of live that way for a little while. And, I think when I was just barely 18, I met my wife, still together today. But,
Wow.
I met her. We were just kids. We had kids early. And from the first child, it was just do whatever you have to do to make sure that you can provide the life that you never had. So I worked a lot of different jobs. I was in sales. When I was younger, I was in construction. I did that for a little while. I worked in the natural gas industry. I've owned my own business before. So I've done a lot of different things. And this is all relevant because what was afforded to me was the chance to find out who I was.
Yeah.
As a person. So, I got a job at Demco. For me, it was going to be just a job. It was just doing something. I had a rental business that I had at the time when I got the job there, and I had a kid going off to the Marine Corps, and I had kids growing up and stuff like that, and I really wanted to try to build that for them, but they had their own dreams and their own goals and their own ambitions, and which I'm thankful for, to be honest with you, because I don't want them to live my dreams. I want them to live their own,
Yeah.
So, but I had that when I went to work for Demco, and then, Demco was great. They just kind of kept promoting me. I worked hard and they kept promoting me, and I was a group lead at one time, and then I was in quality, and so, but they did good things for me. So I stayed there, and I sold the last business that I had, and worked for Demco, but I got to a point where, in overcoming or trying to overcome a lot of my past and a lot of my history, I kind of lost myself, who I was. It's like, you think about that, and most people ask me, well, who are you? Well, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, that's what I do, that's who I am. That's all that's all I really ever wanted to be. So, you don't have a life when you're young, and you have this image of what you want your life to be like. You think, gosh, and I don't want to get too deep into this because I'll get too emotional, but you think as a kid, sometimes you're like, man, I just wish I had a normal family. That's a tough one, because that brings up a lot of old stuff. But if you think about that, you think about how God works sometimes. You go from not having the family that you think you should have and living in foster homes and group homes and things like that. And then he goes off and blesses you with the best family you could have. So
that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, the way he works is amazing. And, I'm not sad. It's just, I'm an emotional person. Sometimes I found that the last couple of years, especially, I've been a pretty emotional guy, but, you find that you have everything that you ever wanted.
Yeah.
So, but you get to a point where, life happens, things happen. So, I had suffered those traumas as a young person, tried to get better through the years, just doing this and that, but you can only get to a certain point. And that's where your content comes in. Well, you work so hard to get to a point in your life, and you can't seem to get past it. And you can't figure out why you can't get past it, but it's just because you were never given the tools. I didn't have people that I looked up to when I was young. I had people I didn't want to be like.
Yeah.
And so, but that doesn't give you any tools. That just gives you a picture of what you don't want to see yourself like.
Yeah, you learn what not to do, what not, how not to be, but you still don't learn what to do and what to be. You just get like half the puzzle, right? Half the equation.
You get half the equation, and you spend your whole life trying to figure out the other half of the equation. That's the thing. So what you're doing is you're bridging the gap for people. See, people like you bridge the gap, and maybe you understand it, maybe you don't understand it, but there's a lot of people out there that don't simply just know how to be because they were never given the tools. They were never raised in that manner. You can take a kid, or you could take a young adult that was raised, and there's a study on it out of a book I was reading, but and it was a study with monkeys, but basically what it boils down to is it's those generational curses, because you have somebody that maybe you didn't have the greatest parents, and then that person grew up and they didn't feel, and they had that trauma. So then they pass that down. At some points it gets to the point where it's so bad that somebody has to break those chains, And
I call it stop the bleeding. we got to stop the bleeding.
Well, that whole study was, it talked about, people that like myself that didn't have a lot of that were raised with around a group of people, and the challenges that they face and the certain challenges that they face in life. Well, a person that comes from my background probably has quite a few more challenges than somebody that comes from a good, stable home that has, a really good background, that was given the tools and given everything by a loving parent or someone in their life to say, hey, this is how to be, this is how you should act. And by the way, I'm the example, so you find yourself trying to find different examples in life.
Yep.
You read books, you see guys like you, and you're telling the real story about the way things are supposed to be. So when I say you're bridging the gap for people like me that were operating in the world only off of what they knew and only trusting themselves, because that's part of it. And I'll get into that. But when you only trust yourself and you don't trust anything that anybody else is telling you, it's really hard to get past that level. I worked my way into middle management, done things like that in sales, and I was manager of a store, all the titles that, that you can possibly think of. I've had titles. Titles are what they are. They're useless, but they really are. I think it's more about people than it is about title. You said it a million times, you can be a manager or you can be a leader. It's just what it boils down to. You can manage or you can lead.
Yeah.
So people follow leaders. They don't follow managers. But you get that other half, and see, that's the half that a lot of us, people like me, they didn't have that half. So don't want to jump around too much. I'll kind of stay in my story a little bit. So working for Demco, I was probably 5 years in working for Demco, 4 or 5 years in working for Demco. Had thought I had overcome a lot of my past. Come to find out, I didn't really overcome it. I just kind of pushed it. You get that a lot. You kind of push it off to the side and you try to do your life in, with it, and it's kind of lingering with you the whole time.
Yeah.
But tried to do that. The good thing about these little towns is that they have all these little celebration days. And so they get everybody together and they do stuff. And I bring that up because my wife and I were on a trip, just a short trip here, local, with a couple of friends, and we were riding motorcycles and we were going on this trip. And before we were going to go into the celebration days, we stopped at this convenience store. And my wife and I, now we've been together since we were teenagers, and we have 3 kids, amazing kids together, and we've just been together forever. So, and she's the love of my life. Well, I'll say that. I mean, I'm not the kind of guy that won't praise his wife in public. I praise mine. She deals with a lot. So I make sure I give her props every chance I get. But so we're in the celebration days, and I'll try to make this story short, but I go into the convenience store, I get gas, I pay for the gas, and she tells me that she wants to go in and get something to drink, and she's in the store for a really long time and she doesn't come out. Well, long story short, I come in and she's laying in a pool of her own blood.
Man.
Yeah, no, it's serious stuff. And that was really hard because, come to find out, she was bleeding internally over some issues that she was having. And, even her doctor that did her surgery, told her, you shouldn't be living, you shouldn't be around. And for a person like me that didn't have anybody growing up and that felt alone most of the time, not having her presence, that doesn't work. That doesn't work.
You don't even want to imagine that one.
Nope. Not even a little bit. But, so you go through that. And then, I got to the point where in my own life, you get to the point where you're trying to deal with things and you're self-medicating. And I had stopped drinking at that point. And I think I had been sober probably maybe 6 months, if I'm lucky, 6 months. My health was failing, and it was because, I just wasn't living my life right, Matt. You live it right. You're a good dad. You love your kids. You love your wife. You think you're getting things right, but you just don't have them right. You know what I mean? You always have something that's there. It's pulling at you. It's not of you, but you allow it to take control of your life. So, I had just recently quit drinking, and I was a pretty good alcoholic, I think. So I'd recently quit drinking. I changed my eating habits. I used to be like 300 pounds. I was a pretty big guy.
Wow.
Changed my eating habits, and then
you were making these changes. You were making these changes before you discovered any leadership development content. You were just figuring life out for yourself, figuring out you need to make changes.
I was doing that.
We're in.
Yeah, well, we're in the time frame of after I met you the first time and before your content started getting introduced by my supervisor at the time, Dell. He introduced your content to the group, to
Okay.
our quality group, and that's how that got started. But this is in between that time
So
where
you were leading
I
yourself
was
using this
introduced to you
content.
first. What's that?
You were leading yourself using the content to start
Yeah,
looking in the mirror, saying what I need to do, right? What I need to do to apply this
yeah.
stuff in my life.
I knew. I mean, I think I knew I could. I wouldn't say I could feel myself dying, but I could tell that I wasn't in good health. I can tell I wasn't in a good place. And so I had to do something. And yeah, I used your content and I used other content. Um, I lost a bunch of weight. Um,
Good for you,
was
man.
was doing well. But yeah, the thing of it is though, is that when, and everything I do is God centered. And I can say that anytime you're really trying to go after something and do something, the devil will try to pull you back down and he'll use things in your life to try to do that. And I was making all these positive changes and it's like, okay, my wife almost gets taken out. Well, that's my whole life. She's been everything to me. So not having her is just, it's not an option. But so that happened. And, it just, it kind of forced like a breakdown of sorts, where you've already overcome all this stuff in your life and you feel like maybe it's going on the right track. And then you get hit repeatedly over and over and over again when you start making these changes, right?
Yeah.
Like you start making positive changes and it's like, if there's something out there. I mean, if you don't believe in God, you got to believe that when you start making changes, there's something out there that wants to pull you back into the life that you were living consistently. And for me, that's just the devil trying to pull me back,
Yeah.
Um, and so you make these positive changes and man, I went through the last 2 years have been the most difficult years of my entire life. And that's saying something because I've been through some things.
Yeah.
Now, pre me going to, and I won't get into it, maybe with Rhea at some point, but pre me going to foster care, that story is a story all in its own. And so saying that it's the hardest thing I've ever went through is saying something. It's the hardest thing that you can do to change who you are or into who you want to be.
Yeah.
You can have a vision of it, Mac. You can have a vision of it, but a vision is just a vision without action. The action is the hardest part. I think for a lot of people getting started is really hard. And then once I got started, I thought, well, maybe it'll subside at some point. It doesn't subside. Every battle that you overcome, another battle will come. And it's like, so every battle that you overcome prepares you for the next battle, which is going to be even tougher, which prepares you for the next battle, which is going to be even tougher. And so going through this life, the funny thing is up to 2 years ago, I'm going to backtrack a little. I get scatterbrained sometimes.
It's all right.
Up to 2 years ago, I didn't even know I had CPTSD. It wasn't even a diagnosis. I'd been through, different institutions and, just mental hospitals when I was a kid because of all the things that had happened to me, misdiagnosed and misunderstood. That's kind of how I put it in on the website, was just misdiagnosed and misunderstood.
Yep.
And so, but it wasn't until I was like 44 years old that I received the diagnosis. I didn't even know what CPTSD was.
Yeah.
I knew what PTSD was, but I didn't know what complex post-traumatic stress disorder was. And it's just what it lends itself to. It's very complex. It's got a lot of things that PTSD usually doesn't accompany, and so that's the hardest part because you're having to fight all these internal battles all the time. So you fight the internal battles of, am I good enough? You fight an internal battle of having nightmares. Like I have, I take pills just to go to sleep at night. So it's, you have all these nightmares and you take the pills to get rid of the nightmares, but then you take other pills. I mean, so you can kind of go down a track if you're not on top of it.
Yeah.
But you have all these symptoms that go along with it, like, attachment disorders and different things like that you don't necessarily have with plain old PTSD. And I say plain old, and I'm not taking nothing away from that. Support our troops 100%. I'm big country, I mean, my kid was Marine, and I'm the one that kind of pushed him into doing the military. So, but it's funny, the fact that it's just not funny, this PTSD and this complex post-traumatic stress disorder, they're life stealers, and you have to be careful, because if you're not careful, they'll steal your life too.
Yeah.
And, you can live in that trauma, or you can choose to do differently and go a different route. And I chose not to live in the trauma anymore. You live in it, you work through it. And I think that's the hardest part. There's no way to the other side except for through. You have to go through it to get to it.
Yeah.
And, that's hard, because, this isn't even a conversation we can have in one sitting, to be honest with you. There's just too many things that go into it. And so when you talk about personal journeys, and you talk about, how hard has it been, and what does it require of you? Everything. It requires everything. I think you don't necessarily know that to start with. And I think if you did, a lot of people wouldn't even do it to begin with, unless they knew the result that they were going to get in the end. The result is self-confidence. It's self-awareness. It's everything that you ever wanted to be, either as a child or as a young adult, that you can gain. And it doesn't matter what you're doing, or, what job you have. It really just boils down to, are you comfortable with who you are and where you're at in your life? And if you're not, are you willing to make the changes that it's going to require for you to get where you want to get?
That's why I'm so proud of you, Tanner, because, I mean, people who ain't been through what you've been through, this stuff's still hard. I mean, I can't even imagine. I mean, I hadn't went through anything like you, but I know how hard it was for me. And still, it is hard. It's hard for everybody, whether you've been through PTSD, CPTSD, or no PTSD. It's hard to keep going.
To make the changes, it's got to be what you want. You have to want it more than you want about anything. I had a lot of changes to make in my life, a ton of changes to make. I had to get right with God. I had to get right with my family and my kid, and not just my wife and my kids, but my sisters and my brother. And I had to get right with people that I haven't talked to in a really long time, and I keep certain lines of communication open for certain people, and then I have lines that are completely closed off to other people. I don't do it out of spite or vengeance or anger or anything like that. It's just to protect my personal peace. I have some of my past coming back to me, which, when you start to speak up and you start to say things, that'll happen.
Yep.
So, but that's all right. That's all right. Because, if God is for me, who can be against me? No weapon formed against me shall prosper. And I get a little preachy sometimes, even though I always tell people, I'm not the greatest Christian in the world. I have I make a lot of mistakes. I do a lot of things wrong, but I do know that, I have a Lord and a Savior, and his name is Jesus Christ. And it works for me. It's meaningful. It's a relationship that it's difficult, because you think about, I found God in my 20s. I was living the life that I didn't want to live, and I found him in my 20s. And he saved my marriage. He saved he saved a lot. When you go through life, and people always tell you, well, there's no manual to life. Well, I beg to differ. I think there's a manual to life. Yeah, that's a tough thing. Those coming to God moments, and you find them, and knowing what it's like to have them in your life, and then knowing what it's like to try to put that relationship on hold because you think you can do better.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've had quite the journey. And if there's no delay and you can pick me up, tell me about what you're doing now.
Well, now, so, I guess it parlays perfectly into what I'm doing now, which is, I started a charity, which is a nonprofit charity. It's called Mission Ascending Phoenix. Um, it's to raise awareness for CPTSD and trauma. There's a lot of stuff out there right now for PTSD and for different types of trauma, but CPTSD is relatively new in 2022. It got put into the IDC 11, which is, it's a world organization thing, and don't ask me to speak on it because I'm not smart enough, and I don't know what it all means, at the end of the day. But I do know that there needs to be awareness for complex post-traumatic stress. There's a lot of people who live with that. It's not just, like childhood sexual abuse. You can obtain CPTSD, or you can get it. If at any point in time in your life where you were being abused and you didn't feel like you had a way out, and a lot of kids don't, if they're abused, they don't feel like that they have a way out. And then that abuse goes, and it happens over time, and it causes people like myself to develop all these different things. I wouldn't call them bad personality traits. I would say they're survival traits. And I think when you develop survival traits, they're really hard to break. Maybe Ria can speak on that better. But survival traits are really difficult because everything in your body tells you that that's what you have to do, even though logically, it's not what you're supposed to do, because it's telling you do this to survive. And so it's hard to flip your mentality and your mind frame with that. And so my goal is to educate people on what CPTSD is. Maybe you have a family member that is living with it. Maybe you yourself have it. I didn't know I had it until I was 44 years old, and I was fighting something that I had no clue what I was fighting. I was just taking shots in the dark until I had something that I could put a name on, that I can say, this is what I'm fighting. This is what I'm battling. This is my battle. This is my fight. I want more people to get what I was able to get, which is the right diagnosis, so that they can live the most fulfilled life that they can live. I mean, at the end of the day, we can do really good work, Mac. We can really impress the people that we work for, and those types of things. We can learn leadership, but it all starts with it really all starts where you can say to yourself, I know I have these things, but in spite of these things, I want to be more than what I was. And I've talked to people about that a little bit before, where, I'm not the type of person that believes that just because you come from either a shattered home, or you've had problems in the past, or you've had issues, it doesn't mean that you can't aspire to be better and aspire to greatness if that's what you so choose. And so the website really is there for people to, one, gain information, two, to help spread awareness, and three, how do you help spread awareness? Well, the reason that we ask for donations and those types of things is so that we can get materials into the hands of health professionals, because it's not diagnosed, and because it's not in some of the medical books. We're running into issues where it's either not getting diagnosed or people are getting misdiagnosed. And so I've made more strides in the last 2 years of my life than I have in the previous 44 years. And that was just with the right diagnosis. It's the right set of medications. It's the right doctor, or it's the right therapist that knows what you need. And, all of those are important things, but the website kind of explains that. It goes into certain articles on what you should look for in a therapist and what CPTSD is and what are some of the signs of it. Then you have the other aspect that you live with somebody with CPTSD, and what is living with them like, and what can you do to help them? What can you do to help yourself? My wife, like I said, her and I've been together 28 years. And in 28 years, she has loved me and taking care of things when I couldn't take care of them, when I was too sick to take care of things, especially like in the last couple of years. And so what is it like for someone living with somebody with CPTSD? And what are some of the things that they can do to, or at least that they can understand so that it might make it a little easier for them? I watch my wife sometimes and they're called, basically I call them episodes, but you get into a point where there's too much going on and there's too many things going on around you. And for someone like me, it's like sensory overload. And so when you get into that kind of sensory overload, she's the only person that has been able to kind of rein that in for me, so, cause trust is a big thing,
Yep.
Especially with CPTSD, trust is huge because people with it don't trust people because they haven't been able to trust people that were supposed to take care of them, So trust is a big thing. And I guess if I could really say anything about it, it would be that my biggest thing is hopefully I can raise enough awareness and we can help enough people to where we can get people reading your books, reading Ria's books, doing some improvements for their lives. I've even got a couple of Ria's books up on the website. It takes you straight, you can click on her book. It'll take you straight to the website. And you can look at her book and, I'll have that for you too. And, I want to give people tools for personal development. You're going to be one of those, your books are going to be one of those tools. I almost said you were going to be one of those tools, but that'd be a bad idea. But your books anyway are definitely one of those.
Anybody can call me. Say your website real quick for the folks listening, not watching.
Yeah, so the website is missionascendingphoenix.org or .com. We'll get you there. So, come check us out. Hopefully it'll give you some awareness. And if not, check it out anyway. Maybe you have a coworker that has some trauma or some PTSD, and you're trying to think, how can I better help this person at work? Or, if you're just somebody that's got empathy for people in general, come check it out and, gain a little knowledge. And so hopefully, like I was saying, with the donations, we can raise enough money to get enough material into the hands of these health professionals so that people don't go undiagnosed. That's the big thing for me with that. But
one thing, Tanner, is make sure I think you left out a key part. You resigned from your job. You're on a mission.
I did.
You're on, like you said.
I am.
Yeah, you for real on a mission. That's part of your website, part of your brand. So make sure to drop that in there, that what you did there.
Yeah, and I tell you, I say, I resigned from my position. I resigned from a really, really good job to explore this. But I have a passion for it. It's something that I'll do for the rest of my life, whether it's the main aspect of my life or, I guess if I did anything else, it would really have to it would have to support my mission. It would have to support, raising awareness, whether with my time or whether with gaining skills to just help get the word out there. And so, yeah, I did. I left a great job.
That's how you know you're serious about it. I mean, you're living life on purpose at a different level. It ain't about the money. It's about the mission.
That's right. It's about living with purpose. And it's funny that you mentioned that because people always say that, live with purpose. It's hard to live with purpose when you don't have a purpose. You have a purpose to live with it. And then what does it mean to live with purpose? Well, it means that every move that you make and everything that you do is geared towards that singular purpose. So, if you want to make something happen in your life, and this is for everybody, if you want to make something happen in your life, if you want to make it happen, and you say, stop looking outside, look inside, look in the mirror, and start moving with purpose. Because, there's no guarantees with what I'm doing here. I'm making no money. So, there are no guarantees. This is blind faith. So I'm going on blind faith that this thing is going to get a life of its own. God is going to be glorified, and that we're going to be able to help people. But I wouldn't have had that if I wasn't given the tools to get to where I'm at right now. So Demco gave me those tools. You gave me those tools. Other authors gave me those tools. I read leadership. I wouldn't say daily. I read it all the time. All the time. It's my Facebook, it's my TikTok, it's my everything that I do is leadership based, or it's humanitarian based, because at the end of the day, everything that you teach goes back down to it's people, people, people. And if we're thinking about people, you can think about people on your level, or you can think about people on my level. They're both right. I think about people at their most very, very basic need, that need for happiness, that need to feel like, who am I? And to find that person and to overcome the battles that they've had in their life. And you're there to help them along, say, I've got this job, I want to succeed, and max books I can read. And if you are more, if you're more inclined to like Ria's books, well, Ria's books I can read because they're going to get me there. Or, the change book that you guys did together, you can do both. Like my wife has read Ria's and I've read yours, and vice versa. And we've read yours together and separate, in any way that we can absorb the content, basically. So I tell people, live with purpose. What is your purpose? I don't know. Let God guide you. That's all I can say.
Yeah. And I tell people, you got to follow your passion, find your purpose, but ultimately you got to continue to grow. That's the only way you ever get there. And I don't know if you ever truly get there. You're always just getting closer to there, whatever there means. You're just honing in on who am I, where am I, what am I supposed to be, what am I supposed to do? And you can only get there you got to keep growing. You don't just flip a switch and you're there. It doesn't work like that.
Well, I can tell you I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I'm glad I'm not where I was, but I'm not where I want to be either.
Yep. Always growing, man. Like Rhea says, keep climbing. That's what we mean, right? You got to keep climbing that ladder wherever it's taking you. Sometimes you got to get off that ladder.
Even if you feel like you're in between, at least in between is somewhere. At least it's not where you started.
Yeah, you're not stuck. Not where you started. You're not stuck. That's the main thing we don't want to be, is stuck. And you described a lot of time in your life where you were stuck, and you find a way to get unstuck, right? It's like being in quicksand. It ain't easy to get out of.
No, and honestly, I always worry about these interviews because it's too much to unravel. We can sit and talk. We could talk about one little subject. You could pick one subject out. We'll sit and talk about that one for hours.
Yeah.
It's just too much to unravel. When you've lived, I wouldn't say it's definitely not a glamorous life, but when you've lived a life like I've lived, and you've lived different states, and you've had different jobs, and you've been different places, and you've seen all that this country, for the most part, has to offer, it just gives you a deeper appreciation of people in general. And, you can go one of two ways. You can go the way I was going, which was down the path most traveled, or you can go the way I'm going now, which is the path least traveled. But I can tell you that big wide path, man, everybody's taking that one. Do something, stand out, take the other one. I mean, don't do what everybody else is doing. You're going to get the same results everybody else is getting. So if you're taking the road everybody else is taking, don't expect more than what everybody else is getting. And if you want more, take the road less traveled. If you want more for your life, do more, be more.
That's good stuff, Tanner. And I suspect one day you're going to have a show like this of your own, or a podcast, or both, or something, or books. I don't know what's happening in your life down the road. You don't know it. None of us knows, right? But whatever Tanner is supposed to do, I think Tanner's going to be doing it at some point. It just takes time to get there. So I'm extremely proud of you. I mean, you have overcome a lot, and you still climbing. Now you're doing what I always want everybody that I pour into to do. You're helping other people climb, even though it may be hard for you. You have to give up your job, and you got to figure out how to make this happen. I know, Rhea and I know, because we've already done it. Same exact thing, right? Give up your entire income. We gave up benefits and everything. And
well, I tell you, I didn't leave Demco without planting a couple of seeds first. There was a couple of seeds that I got planted that I feel like that have really good people in to take over some of those roles. But yes, it's about bringing people up with you. You cannot come up without bringing people up with you. Plant the seed.
Yep. So it's good stuff, man. I really appreciate you being on the show. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you really like to throw in there, or something you wanted to say that maybe you had notes for or thoughts about saying that you didn't say? You want to drop in here at the last few minutes?
Yeah, I'm sure in about an hour and 45 minutes, I'm going to have the perfect thing to say. Okay. So that's about where we're going to be at with that. In an hour and 45 minutes, I'm going to have the perfect thing to say. I'm like, I should have said that. I should have said that.
That's all right, man. Well, I hope to have you back on in the future and do a recap and see where you've gone and how you've grown and where your journey's at. Because folks who are growing from year to year, there's always going to be new things to talk about. And like you said, we could talk for days about your past, and you got stories, and those stories. And you know this, Tanner, the more you grow, the more leadership principles, the more personal growth principles you learn. All those stories you have, that journey you've had that seemed like it had zero value, you turn that into being something highly valuable, because you tie your story to the individual principles, same way that I do, same way that Rhea does. And that's where that's where your story becomes a platform, a powerful platform.
Yeah, we don't talk about the past to relive the past. We talk about the past because we talk about the lessons we've learned, and we try to help other people not make the same mistakes.
That's right, man. So thank you, Tanner, for coming on, for having the courage to come on, for having the courage to step out there and make Mission Ascending Phoenix.org a reality. And anybody out there listening, Tanner, they can reach out to you. How can they contact you, Tanner?
Yeah, they can contact me right through Mission Ascending Phoenix. It says contact. You can put their contact information in there. It'll email me directly, so I can get back to them directly through that email. Okay. Mission Ascending Phoenix. That's PHOE Phoenix. So I know there's different ways to spell that. So yours is Phoenix with the OE. That's the way you spell the Phoenix, is flying up out of the ashes. So thank you again for being on here, Tanner, and everyone else. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen, or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mac Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mac's books, programs, special offers, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.